We are recording. And we may be live already, so just FYI.
Sorry, just so I get some clarification, I think I joined a little late maybe. You're just asking about our stories from the other day, right?
From Sunday night specifically.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, we're going live. Hi everyone, this is Ali Menegakis with SC4CJR. Thank you for tuning in. We have a fantastic event scheduled for y'all tonight. We are going to be discussing the police versus protesters in a virtual discussion here live on Facebook with members of the ACLU for South Carolina, members of the South Carolina Criminal Justice Reform, SC4CJR, and protesters that were peacefully protesting in Marion Square on Sunday, this past Sunday, before things got more aggressive by the police, and we're going to be discussing that. Joining shortly is going to be Frank Knack, who is the executive director of the ACLU for South Carolina. He is finishing up at a protest as we speak, and so he's busy, but he's going to be joining us in about 10 minutes. But we're happy to have Emily Walter here, who's the community outreach coordinator here with us. And I'm joined by Tola Familoni, who's on the executive board of SC4CJR. He's going to be hosting with me. And we have several, 5 members that were protesters at the afternoon protest in honor of George Floyd in Marion Square this past Sunday. And they're going to be sharing their stories today with all of you. So thank you all for joining us. Tola, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us why you became involved in SC4CJR, what you do, etc.? You're on mute, Tola.
Hold on. Sorry, as Ali said, my name is Tola Familoni. I'm a defense attorney down here in Charleston. You know, and I met Ali when she moved down here, so of course that is my connection, but I'm passionate about the work. You know, the reason why I became an attorney in the first place was for this very purpose. And it's, you know, crazy what's going on right now, but it's also sparking a lot of conversation, which is what we want, which is what we've been hoping for decades, which is why I'm so excited to be involved with this. This is my sole purpose. It's always been my purpose. I'm just happy to be involved.
Thanks, Tola. We're happy that you're involved too. Tola is a top criminal defense attorney, very smart, very passionate, and we're so grateful to have him aboard SC4CJR. Thanks, Tola. Emily Walter with ACLU, the Community Outreach Coordinator. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in this kind of work?
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to meet everyone. My name's Emily. Yeah, so I started the ACLU of South Carolina the beginning of March, so right before COVID struck. I think I was in the office for maybe a week before we all started working from home. But yeah, I think I've always kind of, you know, I've been an organizer for two-ish years, and I've just always been interested in, you know, be able to bring people together to fight for justice and to, you know, see similarities across differences in our lived experiences. Oh, I think you're muted.
Thanks, Emily. We have several activists, protesters here with us today, brave souls that have been out on the streets protesting, voicing their First Amendment rights. We're happy to have them with us. I don't know if you guys, we don't have the names up here because we want to protect their names and take care of them. But we would love if you guys are interested to just say a little bit about maybe why you were protesting in honor of George Floyd. You don't have to, but it's up to you. Em, do you want to tell us a little bit first?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Charleston. I have a family with a long history in Charleston, but both like good and bad. But I was out there protesting for all the people of color in my life. Made an impact on me, and just the growing frustration of every day watching, particularly my Black friends, just in person or on a phone screen or an Instagram post, just crying out for us to do something. And then the unfortunate circumstance of George Floyd happened, and it just is the right time to act upon that.
Thank you, Em. I'm going to go to you, LT. Do you want to introduce yourself and say why you were protesting?
Absolutely. So I am actually born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. So this has been very near and dear to my heart after what happened with Breonna Taylor and with George Floyd, with everybody. I mean, from this past decade to decades before. And the fact that we are not seeing a whole lot of progress within our police system in acts of violence against people who have systemically been oppressed. And so where I am in this point in my life is after reading books like New Jim Crow and things like that, I've really just reached a limit, especially with seeing people of color in my life and people of color in my life just in and out of jail, going into the system, and then right now seeing the fact essentially we have a police state going on, and it is horrifying. And I was on the front lines in Marion, and when they started pushing us back,
We're going to get into that. We're going to get into that.
Okay, yeah, so that's mainly why I'm here. I've been living in Charleston for about a month now, and it feels like it's my duty to be out there.
LT, what brought you to Charleston? It wasn't this protest, right?
It certainly was not this protest. No, I actually signed a 12-month lease here 3 weeks ago, and then seeing what has been just rapidly escalating in our country, I saw protests organized in Charleston and understood that I wanted to get involved.
Thank you, LT. We're going to go next to LG. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, if you're from here, and what got you involved in this protest now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm local, born and raised. I've been in Charleston my whole life. Really, what got me involved was, like she said, just everything happening, injustice happening, and being young and being able to get out there and actually make a difference encouraged me and a large group of my friends to actually go out there and try to make a difference. Just in short.
Thank you, LG. We're going to go next to DT. Can you hear us?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm born and raised in Charleston. Just being in the Deep South, I've always kind of seen underlying systemic sort of racism that I haven't felt the push to really use my voice to speak out against until just recently, especially friends like LG. They've just kind of helped me see that the importance is using my privilege to speak out against these things, because we just kind of see it time and time again, and especially after everything that we saw in Minneapolis, like LT was saying, the police state is getting really scary, the militarization of police. So obviously I have a really big problem with the systemic racism that is inherent in our police system. But I think that just in general, the police system and criminal justice system in general needs to be reformed completely.
We agree with that. PD, how about you? Can you hear us?
Oh, I was muted, sorry. So I'm from Charleston. I'm born and raised. I actually went to Mother Emanuel around the time of the shooting. I was there my entire life, and just the aftermath of that, nothing has really changed in Charleston. That's always frustrated me for 5 years. So I want to be more so on the front lines, like trying to help and organize and like actually get some change down here. That's really very important to me. I want to help give back to the community as well throughout these protests. So I was just talking to somebody at the current protest about how some restaurants down on King Street want to help give back in a way of showing like their support, apparently. One of those restaurants was actually Hall's Chop House, which is very interesting to me. I don't know how I feel about that, but that's just one of them that wants to help. He did a lot the other night, so I don't know if we should align with them, but just throwing that out there so everyone knows. But overall, I just want to be helpful and active. I've gone to every protest since Saturday. And I was there Sunday, so whenever that conversation starts, we definitely need to talk about that, because it's very interesting being in Marion Square with police around, with permission apparently, but they were literally attacking people the other day. But that's all. It's a little rant, I apologize, but I'm gonna mute myself.
Guys, I mean, if you want to start talking about your experiences from the other night, I know for quite a few of you, it was incredibly dramatic. LT, if you want to start, and then we can just go one by one. You guys start talking about, your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got there at 3 in the afternoon. It was extraordinarily peaceful. People were handing out water bottles. There were people who were just sitting in the middle of Marion Square, not doing anything, just sitting in peace. Then when we saw the barricade of, I don't know what it was, SWAT, National Guard, or Charleston police, I don't know, they were just in a line with a tank behind them. And at that point, we just decided, like, there was essentially all young girls at the front at that point, and which was pretty phenomenal to see. And basically all of us were holding hands, and these officers were just right in front of us. They were militant. They had their batons, they had their guns, they had their mace. It was a sight to see. And all of it, like, we were peacefully protesting, like I said, and they had given us warnings of, like, that we can't be there, when I was under the impression that we were under our full right of being there. So that was a huge discrepancy to me. And then they started shooting rubber bullets, macing, they started tear gassing, and it became very militant very quickly. And then they started pushing people from Marion Square to King Street. So it was, I understand in one of the videos that I have at the front line, a man threw a water bottle, and that exacerbated a lot of the issue. I understand that there's bad eggs in a crowd. However, leading up to it, it was peaceful. It was wholly peaceful. And then that happened. It exacerbated the whole thing. And then they started shooting, they started tear gassing, and people were then exited from the square because they pushed us out.
So the response to a thrown water bottle was tear gas and rubber bullets.
Yes, sir.
And you said initially there was a line of women who were in front. Now, did you guys initially decide how you were going to line up? Were you a part of?
We did actually, because I mean, it wasn't any sort of organized thing like, okay, we're going to get all these girls to the front. But no, I mean, as soon as we started hearing white people to the front, all the white people got to the front, because I mean, that's our duty with white privilege, to be able to protect, to be able to be at the front line and protect. And so that's how I took it on. And just to see the way that they militarized so quickly after that, it was pretty horrifying.
So I guess my question then would be, you use the term protect. That mindset, could you elaborate on that in terms of why you feel this perspective of needing to assist?
Well, it's not necessarily a position of needing to protect or assist. It's understanding my own privilege here. I am a white woman. I know the way that the cops will deal with me, more so than I know that they will deal with a woman of color. And so that is just a fact in my life. Like I am privileged. And if I can use my privilege as protection for people who aren't, I'm going to.
Wonderful. And honestly, that's a tactic that we've seen across the country. It's something that's been widely used, and honestly, it's appropriate in so many instances in terms of saving lives and protecting people who, as we know, the reason why we're having this discussion in the first place. So thank you. How about PD?
Let me jump in for a second here, Tola. PD, we'll get to you in a second. We were just joined. Thank you, Frank. I know you are a busy man these days, man. We're so happy to have you. Please welcome Frank Knack. Frank is the Executive Director of the ACLU of South Carolina. He joined us in 2020 in this past January. He previously worked with the ACLU's national offices in New York and Washington, D.C., and with the ACLU affiliates in Virginia and Texas. Most recently, he served as the Executive Director of the Montana Innocence Project and the Alabama Appleseed Center for Law and Justice. Frank, I don't think we have enough time to go into everything that you've done for civil rights and for criminal justice reform, but we are so thankful to have you here. We're so thankful to have you as Executive Director in South Carolina. If you want to just say a few words and introduce yourself and say hello. We're joined here with Tola Familoni, who's on the executive board of SC4CJR. Of course, you know Emily Walter, and we have 5 other activist protesters that are here to share their story about what happened to them on Sunday afternoon in Marion Square.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and it's great to meet you all virtually. Look forward to hopefully meeting in person at some point soon. And I'm just glad to be here and have the opportunity to work with y'all and to listen.
Thank you. So I guess we're going to move on to PD.
Oh God, that camera's awful. Okay, well, Sunday, we were, like someone already mentioned earlier, we were peacefully protesting or trying to, and we were immediately met with several cop cars, military vans, armed riot police, and we initially were starting at the base of the bridge, and as we were walking up, they were already there, like lined up waiting for us, and they told us that we were unlawfully gathering, and that if we didn't leave in 2 minutes, that they would use force. So then we decided to walk down. We walked through the east side in a line, like we marched, and they followed us the entire time. They followed us with a military tank down the streets. So all of us were focused on getting to a main street so we would have visibility. So once we got into the main part of the city, it's a little blurry for me, but all I can really say for sure is that we were followed by a tank the entire time. And then when we got onto another main street, they started following us on foot with batons, fully dressed, completely in their gear. And then at one point we were running behind an alley. We were running through an alley that's behind the Hotel Bennett because they blocked us in. And apparently they were pushing people that were in the front of the line with the batons. So then we ran into Marion Square. While we were in Marion Square, we were still peaceful. We were just trying to be in a place where we could be seen. They started to line up. And like someone else already mentioned, all of the white people were up front. And then I guess at some point I moved further back. They started throwing tear gas. They shot some of my friends with rubber bullets. My roommate got hit and she has a massive bruise on her leg. It was just a complete abuse of power. It was just a complete abuse of power. A lot of people were arrested. One of my other friends was tackled and arrested. She's a trans woman. And I don't think she was in the right section of the jail that she was in. And it was just terrifying. A lot of people were really brutally beaten, just brutally handled. It was just really scary because it was peaceful. And they didn't give it the chance to be known that it was peaceful.
When they initially told you,
sorry, Tola, let me just jump in. We've
Yeah.
got some questions coming in from viewers, if that's okay with you all. But one of our viewers was confused and she asked, they were following you in a tank. They were driving the tank around town. She doesn't understand. Can you explain that?
Apparently, not a tank, my bad. It's an APV. It was a military vehicle following us through. We were on the east side, so we were going down like streets coming off of the bridge because we were walking back into the meeting street area, Marion Square area.
Okay. And when they initially told you guys that you weren't supposed to be on the bridge, was that before curfew? What time of day was that supposed to be?
That was well before curfew. That was at least 2 o'clock. And curfew that day wasn't until, I think, 6.
Correct. So I guess let me ask you, what was your mindset? Do you feel like they were trying to antagonize you? I mean, it's a extreme show of force.
I think they were definitely antagonizing us. I think they were trying to, it was more like trying to scare us into like going home. They just wanted us to disperse. And so when we didn't disperse and we just marched all together, that was when they started following us through the streets.
Was anything being said to you guys? Do you feel like there was any source of intimidation coming from the officers, or was it just simply following you?
It was, the intimidation was immediate because they already blocked the bridge. So we couldn't even get on the bridge. We were trying to line the sidewalk. So we weren't blocking traffic at that point. But as soon as people started coming and we had like a larger group, they kept threatening to use force against us if we didn't disperse. They would give us 1 minute or 2 minutes to disperse. And then it would go back to 1 minute. And then we would try to leave and go to a different part of the town. And nothing was good enough. They just kept threatening us.
Okay. Thank you. DT?
Yeah, so I was actually, I was somewhat of an organizer with the bridge on Sunday. So we had actually heard, I guess that maybe the mayor had heard what our plan was. So he, put the riot police with the APC, I think it's what it's called. And they were all, they all had weapons. Some of them were tear gas, but before we ever had anything, it was just very peaceful. They had weapons that they were using, and it felt very intimidating. And just like PD said, they said this is an unlawful gathering. We had some people saying under 40 is okay, but they were just saying we could not gather at all. And, that didn't really make any sense to me, but we decided that we needed to get somewhere public. So we decided to, like PD said, walk down to Marion Square. Once we got into Marion Square, we tried to work with the police. We actually split up the group. So we would have 40 people at the very most in each group on each side of the sidewalk. So we were all on the sidewalk. We were not out in the street. We were being, as respectful as we could while also asserting our rights. And actually, when the APC rolled in, we were still on the side of the sidewalks and everything. One of the organizers tried to go up and talk to the policeman that said we had 2 minutes to leave. He just refused and said we needed to leave. So that's when we started to try to make our way up. Some people stayed in Marion Square and some people tried to make their way up Meeting. And anytime we tried to make our way back onto King Street, mind you, this is only 3 o'clock, we were met with a line of tear gas and rubber bullet police. They didn't shoot, but they showed that they were willing to. So that's when we kind of broke up. Some people went back to Marion Square, where people were basically just laying on their ground with their hands behind their back in a show of protest. And they ended up getting tear gassed and shot with rubber bullets. One of my friends actually was a trombone, and he was shot up several times on his stomach. And, just in protest and peaceful protest, he was, just trying to lift everybody's spirit with a little bit of music. And he was, shot and tear gassed. So as we made our way back down, we ended up making our way over to King onto Rutledge, made our way back down to try and meet the rest of the group that was at Marion Square, especially after we heard everything that was going on. We made our way back and we finally hit Calhoun. But every road we would get to, we were on the sidewalk, we were being very peaceful. They would block us off. They'd say, no, you can't go this way. There are riders over there. People are riding. We're trying to keep you guys safe. And we know that was, not true. And we even said, if you feel that way, then walk with us, guide us, walk with us, keep us safe, because we're doing this lawfully and peacefully. If you really care, if that's the reason, walk with us, protect us, if that's really what the problem is. And it really, that was never the problem. They like to talk out of both sides of their mouths for sure. And eventually our group were kind of corralled onto Calhoun on St. Philip. There was a line of police cars. I've never seen that many blue lights before in my life. Just 3 APCs, full SWAT, and they were just all right there, right on Calhoun in between St. Philip and King. And then a line of cops got onto behind us on Calhoun, and they both sort of started to push us into St. Philip. As soon as they got pretty much everybody into St. Philip, they started tear gassing everybody. And then as we were running away from being tear gassed, I have asthma, and that could have been a serious health issue. And I was willing to take that risk, but the fact that I was trying to leave at that point and we were being tear gassed into cops waiting, they were waiting at the end of the street to tackle people. I was able to kind of, get away, but I did see one of my friends was tackled to the ground. And probably the worst part of the day was, seeing a person of color tackled into a telephone pole. And I'm pretty sure I remember him hitting his head as he was tackled, because, I was running, but that's something that really kind of stuck in my mind. And it was just, it felt like tactics you would use on terrorists or, people that are beating, you know what I mean? We were so peaceful. We explained ourselves so many times and made it really known that we were peaceful. And to have them, when we're finally trying to leave to get away for curfew, they're going to tear gas us and arrest us. And essentially what they were trying to do at some point were just hold us up until 6 so they could arrest us. They just wanted to make us wait as long as possible, keep us there as long as possible so that when 6 hit, they could just arrest all of us.
DT, thanks. I'm going to jump in for a second. We've got a question from one of our viewers. If you know about how many folks were with you when you were protesting in Marion Square?
I would say initially when we were all kind of split up right at the start, there was probably about 200, maybe 300 with all the people out in the back near Marion Square Park. But again, like I said, a lot of us were kind of split up because essentially, you know, we would try to walk one way and they would come with tear gas and they'd be like, no, we're going to tear gas you if you try to walk any further. And this was when we were walking on the sidewalk. We were doing everything legally and they still just refused to let us, you know, protest properly. So I would say when I got tear gassed and everything, there was probably about 20 to 30 people at that point because they had broken us up so much. But I do remember in Marion Square when people were getting tear gassed and kind of rubber bulleted, I mean, I had to say at least 200 kind of spread out, including like a pretty big group at the forefront of everything.
What I find fascinating about all of this is that they told you there was another group of rioters, right? Another group of people. Well, you guys are the peaceful protesters. What were they doing to this group of people? It seems like they were, I mean, as you said earlier, talking out of both sides of their mouth, because you certainly weren't being treated as if you were peacefully protesting, at least from my perspective. The use of force and the aggression that they used towards you guys seems like something they should have used towards anybody reacting violently.
For sure. You know, we figured that out pretty much immediately. None of the protesters that we were with were going to, you know, agree to that because we knew that anybody out there towards the protest that, you know, me and, you know, other people that organized, we knew for sure that everybody was there for the same reason, which was to protest peacefully, especially after Saturday night. A lot of the people there had just gotten done cleaning up King Street, helping out because we wanted to help clean up these local businesses. We don't want that to happen to our local businesses, especially a lot of them on King Street, which are owned by minority owners, minority women. You know, I saw one corner store being looted and robbed, and I've known that lady since I mean, I can really remember. I used to go there all the time to get snacks, and I'd always, you know, so it's just none of the people there that day were the ones that wanted to riot and loot. None of us were there for that reason. And so for them to tell us, oh, there's riots going on right down the street, we knew that wasn't true. I mean, we knew that nobody, I mean, I saw the people with their hands behind their backs laying on, you know, on the ground. That just wasn't what was happening. So felt like it was just their way to kind of justify the way they were treating us and not let us protest on the sidewalk like we're legally allowed to do.
So one last question for you. When 6 o'clock rolled around, what happened?
So that's, I would probably say it was about 5:45 when I got tear gassed and, you know, I started to run away. I can tell you that by that point, anybody that was still down there probably got arrested because, like I said, they really were just taking down the clock. They were really trying to keep us there, keep us, you know, oh, well, you know, give it just a couple minutes and you'll be able to go down because we're just pushing out the rioters. You know, they wanted to get us to a point where they could say, oh, well, even if you're outside doing something legally, you're still going to get arrested because of this curfew. You know, it didn't matter what we were trying to do, how we were trying to do it. They did not want us there speaking our minds and you know, using our voices.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Totally, did you say me?
I did, yeah, sorry.
Again, my account is a little bit different because I got separated from the main group in Francis Marion like they talked about, but similarities in that at 2 p.m., arrived at the bridge with some other organizers under the impression that the mayor had been talked to and that there was a permit. But it seemed as though he went back on his word, because when we arrived, it was like a fleet of SUVs, a SWAT tank looking vehicle that I've never seen. I didn't even know we had that.
I'm sorry, which mayor did you think there was an agreement? Okay.
That it was fine that we would walk on the bridge, like met with riot gear and then this like large military looking vehicle, and there was a lot of other people showing up kind of being like, whoa, like parked my car, got out. As soon as we walked up over a loudspeaker, there was no explanation, there was no like a police officer with a badge in charge kind of communicating to people, just over the loudspeaker coming from a military looking tank saying, you have 2 minutes, which is not enough time to do anything. You have 2 minutes to disperse or you will be forcefully removed or arrested. So everybody backed up and was kind of like, what do we do? What do we do? And someone said, let's just go to Marion again. So we marched through the east side on the sidewalk. Everything was fine, but then we looked back and the tank was following us, which caused some fear again, because it's a military vehicle. I don't know what's inside it, what it's capable of, why it's out in a residential area. So we hurried to Marion Square where other people had assembled. And at that point it was about like the 300. But then when we got there, there were even more of those same military vehicles kind of lined up on different sides of the square. So 3 parts of the square have streets and then one is a building. So if you retreat to that, you're backed up against a wall. There's tanks on this side. There's riot police on this side with a tank. And there's Meeting Street with cop cars, both normal cars and undercover were also present everywhere. Park service, like just full. I've never seen in my entire life that much police force in a response to something. And it was as though we were like terrorists with some kind of like bombs or something, but all we had were cardboard signs and our hands in the air and our words. And Marion Square, if people don't know, is just like this big open field, so there's enough space to move around because it's a pandemic. So that was another reason. It's pandemic time for respiratory illness, so that was also shocking for them to use a tear gas deterrent when people that's already an issue. But basically they lined up and started to advance while people backed up in response. They didn't move forward. White people did move in front of people of color in order to protect them, but we backed up because it, again, was like riot police with batons that were the size of like broomsticks. I've never seen batons that big. And so they started to close in, and then they did the 2-minute warning thing again. But if you're stuck in a square and you're surrounded, how can I disperse when every time I move in a direction, some law enforcement officer of some type is telling me to get back or is going to arrest me, hit me, shoot me, or gas me? Like, how do you escape that? So things got a little chaotic, and then I don't know exactly why the first tear gas shot was fired, but then the gas pop went off. I went running to the back corner and slipped out with about 75 people. So they divided our numbers. And some people stayed in Marion. The 75 people with me were mid-20s and under. So we were not, there was no rioting. It was youth running from physical harm. As somebody who was close to organizers, I was trying to keep an eye out for tanks and tear gas, et cetera, just to get us back to the square. A tank followed us down Meeting Street while we were running, trying to run the sidewalk to get away. We turned left on John Street because King Street, which is where the main police presence was, and Meeting Street run parallel. So we had to make a left at some point. But every time I would run ahead to see on the street if the tank had caught up to that corner. It was right there waiting. But we finally got to John Street, took that left, and everybody's kind of like, I don't know where to go, I don't know where to go. And then probably the scariest thing for me that day, or second scariest, I have never, as a white privileged person in Charleston, I've never been scared to walk the streets even by myself at night as a LGBT female. I've never been as scared in my life as when the tank stopped suddenly. The National Guard jumped out when we had not seen them yet. So people looking like they're in the military, and they, like a whole group, jumped out of this military vehicle with guns drawn and their fingers on the trigger pointed at a group of 75 youth. And so we all screamed gun and went running back, but the other tank is behind us. And then luckily there's an alley that they built. So some people went back, but they were met with force, and so it got a little bit smaller. We ran down the alley as fast as we could, got back on Meeting, ran all the way down. They chased us with the tank again and some other police cars. Luckily, the National Guard doesn't know the Charleston streets very well. There's a natural path underneath an overpass that connects to King Street. So we just tried to hurry, like all the young people, through the grass to make it over to King Street and into a residential neighborhood. That confused them, so they didn't know where we were for a moment. So we all kind of sat in a park further away, regrouped, talked. Again, everything was peaceful. Talked, gave out water and snacks, because we had been running for about like 30 minutes from people trying to shoot us. And then we decided we had to go back to Marion because it was getting too close to 6. And we knew at 6 is like, if it's bad now, then 6, I don't even know what's gonna happen at 6. So we go, and we know we can't take King back. So we had to cut through for another residential area, the west side. And then got on Vanderhorst Street, which runs back into King, and then you can run to Marion quick enough, if you're quick enough. Basically, if you didn't run quick enough, they would snatch you up.
And can I interrupt you for just 1 second? Because we've got some questions that are coming in from our viewers, and see if you can answer them. One of the viewers asked, was it one police department? I know you mentioned the National Guard, but was it one police department that was acting differently than the others, or was it impossible to tell the difference? Could you tell?
At first, it was impossible to tell because everybody was in matching riot gear. The National Guard the riot gear police were being the most like physically abusive with no like talking. They would just walk up and either arrest you or tackle you. The National Guard was verbal and would aim a gun, but I don't know if they shot, but they definitely were trying to be big and scary, which like leads into my point on Vanderhorst Street. The SWAT tank surprised us, jumped out, National Guardsmen jumped out using expletives and said like, get the F back, get the F back. I was against a wall at that point, and I tried to walk, like sneak past, because I was just trying to get to my car, which was right around the corner. And he stopped me and was like, what the F are you doing? Like, don't move. And I held my hands up and I put them down, and I was like, let's just calm down. My car's right around the corner. And at first he listened, like I watched him be like, okay, she's trying to leave. And then he went back into this like aggressive mindset, like went from human into like assault mode, and was like, get the F back, like go over there with the rest of them. So we had to walk further, which we then, it was kind of like we were like cattle, and they were like trying to block us and then chop us up so that they could pick us apart.
And just to clarify, you were not arrested that day. None of our participants here that were protesting that day were arrested. We planned that way. We did not want to have anyone that has pending criminal charges speak today. Obviously, you know, we don't want them to make any statements that could be potentially incriminating. But I have another question here, Emma. I wonder if you can answer. One of the viewers asked, were there any conversations with law enforcement or government officials beforehand where discussions were had to discuss plans or routes of your walk and places you wanted to gather?
I cannot answer that question.
I was going to say I could actually answer that. We did kind of talk to the mayor a bit, and we also expressed to several police officers when we were starting at Marion Square what exactly what we were doing. Again, one of the organizers actually went up and shook the police officer's hand and explained, this is what we want to do. We want to be as peaceful as possible, and they did not care.
Thanks. And one more question. Shannon Timon asked one of the viewers, did the tanks have a specific police department's logo on it, or could you tell who they belonged to?
So the tanks, Charleston Police Department, Mount Pleasant was there, and their vehicle was an even bigger military, even different military vehicle. And then Berkeley County was probably the worst one. That's the one that played the cops theme song as they tear gassed people, as if it were a joke. And the part about it is I was at the intersection. I finally did get to my car, but that same guard who cursed me out interjected me and said, I thought you were going to your car. Like,
wow, that is crazy.
I'm arrested. And I was like, sir, my car is right. I can see it. Like, please just let me go to the car. He said, okay, but everyone behind you is getting arrested.
And so our viewers know, I mean, I know the people that are here today were not arrested, but there were a total of 62 arrests that were made this past weekend. May 30th through 7 a.m. June 1st. And out of those 62 arrests, y'all, 42 of them were made for disobeying a lawful order. And those are the charges that the people that were protesting in Marion Square were charged with. So the majority of those were these peaceful protesters, like the ones here, that they were lucky enough not to get arrested, that were charged and arrested for disobeying a lawful order. I just want to thank you and all of you guys for sharing your story and being brave enough to go out there and voice your First Amendment right, and also to be here today to share your stories. I know some of you didn't feel comfortable showing your faces. We obviously understand that, and we're not sharing any of the names today. Frank, I want to go to you if it's okay. How do you feel, and how do you feel after hearing these stories? I know you've been talking to other people about that, but what is your perception of all those?
Definitely. Well, thank you again so much for the opportunity to join you all today. I mean, it's shocking and predictable at the same time, which is just a deeply concerning combination of things. That's the stage we're at with law enforcement in this country right now, and have been, since the beginning. I arrived at Marion Square at about 3:30 on Sunday afternoon. And what I witnessed was a group of people peacefully protesting against police violence and for racial justice. I witnessed a number of law enforcement entities from at least Mount Pleasant Police Department, Charleston City Police, Charleston County Sheriff's Office, Berkeley County Sheriff's Office, and later SLED arrive in riot gear with armored vehicles and order people to disperse. And when folks continue to peacefully protest and assert their constitutional rights, law enforcement responded with overwhelming and unnecessary force. I saw them launch multiple projectiles at individuals. I saw one person came up to me and showed me the mark it left on their stomach, which was probably close to 1 inch in diameter circular mark with blood. So these are serious weapons, and I think law enforcement is always quick to say that they're using less than lethal weapons, and I think it's important to always remember that these quote-unquote less than lethal weapons have a well-documented history of killing people and causing serious bodily injury. And so they're using both chemical weapons as well as launching projectiles, and I don't want to say exactly what it was because I don't want to be called out for saying, having the wrong term, but they were weapons that were shooting fairly, dangerous objects at individuals for absolutely no reason. And so, it's deeply disturbing to see police respond to a protest about police violence with nothing but violence. And so, there's a number of other disturbing things I witnessed. When COVID-19 originally hit, we sent a letter to each sheriff and chief across the state urging them to do everything in their power to reduce the number of people at the state level in the prison system and at the local level in the jails. And the reasoning behind that is because we were seeing over and over across the country the rapid spread of COVID-19 in our prisons and jails and also in immigration detention facilities. And, unfortunately, most prisons and jails in South Carolina have refused to follow that. But at a time when we were at heightened alert because of COVID, not only was it inappropriate to make arrests under any circumstances in the park that day as people were exercising their fundamental constitutional rights, but they were also making those arrests in the context of COVID. And so not only putting individual protesters at a heightened risk of COVID, also their own officers and the broader community. I mean, there was just a complete lack of caring about public safety on the part of law enforcement, which is supposedly there to protect public safety. And I think it's a really important opportunity for us. So the ACLU nationally and here in South Carolina are very much in support of the growing national movement to divest from police and to fundamentally rethink public safety. And I think what we saw on Saturday, at least what I witnessed on Saturday, and what we've heard in terms of complaints from individuals at protests around the state really reinforces why we need to divest from police. I think for too long, we've had this narrative in this country that more police equals more public safety. And despite all of the research that shows that, there's no correlation between the number of law enforcement officers in the community and crime rates, law enforcement and others who support that approach continue to, produce that or push out that myth. So I think it's really time, and I think this weekend was a reinforcement of why we need to, move away from a law enforcement approach to every societal ill. everyone has a quality public education, that everyone has universal health care, that everyone has access to transportation, those basic things that are actually going to make our community safer and stronger. And so I think, it was disappointing. And so we sent a letter to at least all the law enforcement leaders who we could identify as having had officers present at the police violence, demanding a number of things. One, that they publicly apologize for allowing their officers to engage in that kind of abuse against people in the community, that they take immediately investigate whether their individual officers used excessive force, and then hold those officers accountable. And we also asked a number of practical questions. What was their decision-making process to arrive at a nonviolent protest in riot gear with armored vehicles? What was their decision-making process behind moving from asking people to disperse to using overwhelming force against nonviolent protests? What was their decision-making process for conducting arrests, period, but also conducting arrests in the context of COVID-19? And so we're optimistic that they will answer those questions. If they don't, we will continue to engage in advocacy to ensure that they do, and we'll continue to engage in advocacy working towards divestment from police and reinvesting that money in our communities.
How long has it been since you reached out to them with your questions?
So we sent the letter yesterday. And so far, I think we've only heard, and we haven't heard personally, we've heard through the media that the Charleston County Sheriff has responded. They responded to a media inquiry about our letter, but nothing personally to us yet. And in that letter, I think it just further shows how deep the problem is. It's basically an attempt to other protesters, to make them not human. They say that they're there to protect quote unquote citizens. And I looked at the arrest reports of who was arrested, and almost everyone was from the Charleston County area. So I'm not quite sure how they decide that certain people from this area are, worthy of protecting their constitutional rights and others aren't. And then, another disturbing feature we saw, and I just want to read this quote to make sure I accurately quote the mayor. Everything I witnessed was pre 6 p.m., so pre-curfew, which I think is a whole nother layer of problems. But even post-curfew, the law enforcement is on the record to reporters about they believe their authority to selectively enforce the curfew, which I think, reinforces why folks were there in the first place, the selective enforcement of laws against predominantly Black, Brown, and Indigenous people across this country is the history of law enforcement. And so having law enforcement reinforce, and the mayors reinforce that they are selectively enforcing this is a problem. And just let me read this, if you all don't mind. So this is the mayor of Mount Pleasant. He said, quote, "Curfews are a tool in case things get out of hand." And he added that dining out was, quote, "not a law enforcement priority, nor should it have been." So what he's saying is that if you're trying to get, your seared scallops and your martini at a nice restaurant, that's fine, make your order. If you're trying to, protest against for racial justice and against police violence, that is something that they're not going to tolerate and they're going to arrest you for. I think that's deeply troubling that folks are going on the record. Our community leaders are going on the record and saying that.
We have a question from a viewer as well. Did you receive any apology from any agency as of yet?
Not yet. No, we've received no response at all to the ACLU. The only thing we've learned is the one response to through the media.
If I can interject, the most responses that we've seen from the Mount Pleasant Police Department is that they've been liking pictures of people's injuries. They liked a picture of my roommate's injury, and she's actually right here with me, and she was on the front line in the middle of the Marion Square protest, and she actually talked to some of the cops. I'm just gonna let you guys hear what they said to her.
Hey guys, so Hello. My name's Taylor. I've been, whatever. My name is Taylor. I don't care. And I've been at the protests every day except for today just because I had work and I couldn't go. And I just wanted to say that the cops, they, to my knowledge, I didn't see any, like, you know, of them, like, calling at us or saying things, like, personally, but I do know for a fact that they were using intimidation as a form to control our group. And for the past couple of days, actually, they've also kind of been pacifying our group in a way. They've kind of just been allowing us to walk around Colonial Lake to kind of subdue us. At least that's how I feel. Because if you look from even the sidewalks on the roads next to Colonial Lake, if you're not at a corner, you can't see it. And if you're across the lake, you can barely hear a group of 75 people chanting what we were doing. And so yesterday, we all split up into groups and we walked around the city to get more coverage and stuff. And it was fine. We were followed by police officers, and they like asked us, like, confirming where we were going, and we told them we were going back to Colonial Lake because we did not want to start issues. But as for Sunday, as of yet, there has been no formal apology by any of the police departments there or by the mayor, yet the mayor was out today with our group. And also on Sunday, I was going around, I was filming, that's why I was in the front lines. I wanted to make sure if something happened, I could get it. I got one person being tackled to the ground. I got another girl being arrested for trying to help her sister, who now is in surgery today for a fractured jaw because the police hit her with a baton so hard in the face. And I was asking the police officers multiple times, are your body cameras on? Do you have your body cameras turned on? None of them would reply to me. One of them said yes, which I was thankful for. And then another one laughed, looked at me and said, I don't know, I think so, they're supposed to be on. And
Taylor, let me interrupt you there. Let me interrupt you just for a second. You know, that's one of the questions that one of our viewers was asking, you know, about body camera footage and, you know, when police are, you know, supposed to be using that or not. And Tola, correct me if I'm wrong, and Frank and anyone else here, but my understanding, you know, one of the, I guess, good things, if you can say, that came after, you know, a few years ago when Walter Scott was killed and after the Mother Emanuel shooting, you know, South Carolina passed a law that delineated things about body cameras, basically ordering that each agency has to have some kind of procedure for body cameras and supply them. But one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that it doesn't require officers to always wear them. All it does is require that they have procedures and when they're going to utilize them. But I wanted to ask you, Frank, and thank you, Taylor, for sharing your experiences too as well. But I don't want to get too much over here. But Frank, when you heard, I don't know if you had heard, I think it was M that mentioned that there was a point where I think you said it was Berkeley County Sheriff's Office, M, that was playing the Cops theme song.
That was right before they got tear gas, and it actually got in my car. They shot it right next to my car, so I choked out on that in my vehicle trying to leave.
I had not heard that before, and that's very shocking. Frank, how does that make you feel? Like, what do you think when you hear that?
I think that's just another reason why, you know, oftentimes when you know, police violence happens, when, you know, someone is murdered, George Floyd in this case, but, you know, the multitude of murders that have happened, the everyday police violence that happens, the calls are often, particularly from, often from politicians, that we need, procedural reforms. We need procedural justice. We need to have better training. We need to have better, body cam policies. We need to have more diverse police departments. We need to do community policing. And the problem with all of those, quote unquote solutions is they actually don't fix the fundamental problem. We've come in this problem is really, I don't want to put all the blame on law enforcement themselves. This problem is really coming from our political leaders. In our society today, we've turned, law enforcement into society's solution for drug use, for kids misbehaving in school, for people with mental illness, for people experiencing homelessness. And we've sent law enforcement out to deal with all those societal problems, failings, without any tools. Law enforcement can't give you money. They can't give you housing. They're not social workers. They don't have the tools on their tool belt. They have guns, tasers, handcuffs, lethal force policies, but that's what they can bring to a situation. And so when we're talking about, procedural reforms, more training, more et cetera, that can't fix that problem. And so until we realize that our political leaders need to change the way that law enforcement is used in this country to end the war on drugs, to ensure that we have, community mental health programs, to get police out of schools, and then we have counselors instead of handcuffs in schools. Until we make those reforms, we can keep, tweaking procedural training guidelines, but that's not going to fix anything. And so, when I hear what the it sounds like the Berkeley County Sheriff's Office were doing in terms of playing that music, and just being, disrespectful to the community, I think that just reinforces why we need to go in a new direction, and we need to drastically reduce the budgets of police departments and drastically increase the budgets of actually community programs that are going to make our community safer and stronger.
I think the irony of so much of what we talked about today is that this is the Black experience. Much of what's been going on is the struggle that so many people deal with on a day-to-day basis, not just with the police, but just the struggle of interaction with their community. It's horrifying to see that this is the response to a protest regarding that struggle, because as we've seen with COVID and the associated protests regarding my quarantine and things of that nature, we're not getting the same responses. And the only true difference is the makeup of the crowds that are protesting. And I'm slightly grateful because we're seeing on a very large scale what people of color have been talking about for an incredibly long period of time, and the nation has at large refused to acknowledge. I think we skipped LG a little bit earlier. Ali, I'm not sure where we are on time. LG, you want to talk a little bit about what you experienced?
Yeah, I can make it brief. Luckily, me and Em had almost the same experience as well. I was with her before we got separated.
Let me just, before you continue, just wrap in the presence of the media or the lack thereof at Marion Square.
Right. That was the most surprising thing. It was crazy. I had people texting me for my safety, because they went live on Live 5 News for everyone to see what we were doing. But apparently, as soon as the cops started putting on gas masks, that's when the live feed stopped. That's when it all went, downhill. Everyone got separated, so on and so forth. And the biggest things from that was caught from, protesters was pictures of them laying down, the video of, I'm just going to call him G. He was basically giving a speech to the rioters on his knees with next to the organizer. And the video got 33 million views on Twitter right now of him doing this. And they just walked up to him and took him, no words, no nothing. And he was just peaceful with everything. The media failed to even, if I had the answer, I just don't know. Maybe just because they want to paint the picture that we were the looters of Saturday. And that was kind of how they reacted to us on Sunday. And, just like how everyone said, we went there with the intention of being peaceful, especially at the bottom of the bridge where we got met with APCs, fleets of cars, no explanation, just told we have 1 minute to disperse. You're being illegal. You can't be in a group of 40. You need to move now. So you know, they weren't there for that, but somehow they knew we were about to be there. So it's funny how they weren't there for that, but they were there today when we were being peaceful. So it doesn't really add up to me, but
almost felt orchestrated, as though they were told not to be there and the police were told to do this to make an example in response to Saturday night, when it did not have to go down like that. And then the city council meeting as well. So the people that are, you know, supposed to represent the citizens did a Zoom meeting similar to this. No mention of Sunday, only mention of Saturday, and said nothing happened on Monday.
Yeah, I actually wanted to jump in to maybe explain it a little bit on, you know, I was watching Live 5 later that night at 6 p.m. I actually have friends that know people that live on the east side in the poorer, more like predominantly Black neighborhoods. And she was seeing videos, lives from her friends of cops in that neighborhood, basically tear gassing on residential streets, pulling people, predominantly Black again, off of their porches under the guise of, oh, you guys started a trash can fire in the middle of your street. And it was actually really interesting to see where on Live 5's own live stream, they actually were told by the police, listen, there's shooting, there's live rounds going off. Meanwhile, you couldn't hear any live rounds. There was no, I don't really think there was any live rounds, but that's what the police were telling the media was, you know, you need to get out of here. It's not going to be safe for you guys. Meanwhile, they are in force in a predominantly poor Black neighborhood, arresting people off their porches. So, you know, that's also things I'm hearing from friends and people that actually live on the east side, and they saw these things.
Now, I do have a question. Across the nation, we're seeing images of officers who are actually joining protesters and lending a supporting hand. Have you seen any of that here in Charleston?
Yeah, I have seen it in small, like I forgot if it was Peyton or Taylor said it, but basically they would try to kind of pacify us. They'd come and they'd give a hug, and you know, it'd be all great, but you know, then we'd go back and watch the video of an officer hugging a protester. That officer, not 12 hours before, was shooting tear gas and rubber bullets at us. So it just feels like almost like I mean, you see in every other city, every other major city that's having these protests, where the police will say, you know what, we're with you, we understand, let's walk together. And then not even a couple hours later, they're the same officers that are tear gassing and shooting these protesters.
So you think it's more of a photo op, it's more of a farce,
Sure.
than an actual partnership?
Yeah.
Right. I don't think any of us, anybody that seriously, we've actually been talking about it with the organizers of Black Lives Matter about our position on that, because at least at the moment, nobody who understands what's going on believes the police at all. We just see it as a photo opportunity for them. You know, we just see it as something that they're using to make themselves look good, you know, try to like push Sunday under the rug. But none of us are going to forget. I'll never forget that in my entire life.
And there was something that happened at a peaceful protest today, again, where suddenly it's as though Sunday never happened.
Right.
And two officers were present, but we were prepared for the worst. But in Charleston, there's this really lovely trend of tokenism to make it feel better. That happened with LGBT hate crime legislation. They said, look at all our LGBTQ officers. You're safe. We're with you. Today, they sent a Black officer over to say, hey, we're with you guys. And if there's other protests, like counter protesters, which there weren't, We're just here to keep the peace. Where was that? What, where was that Sunday? What was Sunday? And there's an eerie video that I also got that Allie has of them shooting tear gas. And right as they shot the tear gas, and everybody it was a moment of almost like defeat, like we were in some type of war zone. The church bells of St. Matthew's, which is the backdrop of Marion Square, started tolling like on the chime. And it's probably one of the most eerie videos I'll ever watch in my life of Charleston Police and National Guard tear gassing people to church bells. And it's like the phrase "saved by the bell," we're not even saved by church bells anymore.
And I want to let all our viewers know the video that Em is mentioning, Allie will be sharing on our Facebook page. So all those videos will be available to see. Some of them are quite vivid and graphic. So be prepared. I also wanted to ask all of you as a group, obviously you guys have been protesting. You must know some people who have been arrested. Have you heard anything about the conditions in the jail? How they've been transported to the jail, their treatment?
They're pretty atrocious right now. I know people who were arrested on Sunday, and when they were being transported to the jail, a lot of them were transported by paddy wagon, and just were being taken by like 15 at a time. And the conditions in jail were pretty atrocious. They blocked out all of the windows while people were in jail, so that there was really no communication. Everybody was put in their own individual cell, so that again, no communication could be dissented. And what really freaked me out was the fact that the windows were blacked out, so they couldn't see anybody moving, any of the COs escorting people in or out. They wanted to keep everybody very, very separate. They didn't really speak to them about COVID or how to take precaution in COVID. I know somebody who did not have running water. It's a jail, I get it, but so it wasn't great.
They also denied their basic right of phone calls.
And weren't read their Miranda rights.
But not read their rights, and multiple people were denied their one phone call for hours, if not at all.
Yeah, if not at all.
You had parents, you had siblings, you had spouses, you had roommates wondering, wait, they didn't make it home. I have no idea.
Yeah, I have a friend who was arrested right when I had been tear gassed. He was one of the ones that had been arrested, and a group of friends that kind of helped organize stuff. We were looking on Charleston County's website to try and find anybody that we knew, and in his instance, his family, even his brother had no idea that he had been arrested, and it was probably 10 or 11 at night by that point. And so he said that he had absolutely no opportunity to contact anybody to help him out, and essentially they said to him, like, oh man, you're just like, sucks, you're gonna have to stay here tonight. They didn't give him any opportunity to call anybody or bail himself out, anything like that.
Did you see any efforts to delay bond?
Yeah, exactly that. Like, not allowing people, like, obviously, what if you don't have, what if you're, a 20-year-old, 21-year-old college student and you don't have an extra $400? We're in a pandemic.
And to chip in off that, we didn't get any word of anyone getting released until about 2 a.m., 3 a.m. at the most weirdest time after curfew. So that was the biggest thing of our concern of how are they letting y'all out? We didn't hear anything from them. Luckily, while, like he said, we were tracking the inmate research or searchup.com, seeing familiar faces, trying to do the best we can to communicate to their families, let them know they were okay. And, we didn't hear anything from them until they were released at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning, Monday morning.
Do you know when their bond hearings were?
I'm not sure. I would have to get with another organizer because, like I said, even the person controlled with the funds had trouble even getting in contact with our friend as well.
Yeah, I had a really difficult time bailing one of my friends out. I actually went and posted the bail at about 7 o'clock in the evening, and then they told me I was calling probably like every 4 hours or so. Like, I know it's a process, just to see when she would be released. At about 5:30 that morning, they told me she wouldn't be, and that there would be a bail hearing, which was shocking to me after I just posted bail. So that was so I didn't get to hear from her until 2 o'clock the next day at bail court, which I attended. And then I didn't get to pick her up until the next night, which was Monday night at 9. So she spent over 30 hours in there after I posted her bail.
Was she 30 hours in solitary confinement with no windows?
She sure was. And she was strip searched. She did not have any water. It was just interesting hearing from certain people how extensive their intake was compared to others. And so I know others who were full on strip searched and those that weren't. So that to me is very interesting.
Were there any trends, any consistencies that you saw in terms of who was getting the worst treatment? Okay.
I can't say that there were, but yeah, I don't know. There were just a lot of discrepancies. It just didn't feel like they were bringing people in and doing anything by the book in particular. It was just like, oh, you could be a threat. You should spread your cheeks. You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, at this stage,
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Just a quick question. Were they, and this may have already been asked earlier, once folks were either, in the van going to the jail or in the jail itself, were they making sure that folks had protective gear for COVID context? No masks, anything like that?
No, they did not get masks when they were in jail. They did not get masks until release.
And were they checking temperatures? Were they doing any precautionary? Nothing?
Sorry, yes, they did do precautionary temperature checks, but that was it.
Okay. And did they have access to like wash their hands and like hygiene products?
No, because this particular friend that I'm mentioning, she did not have running water the whole time. So she could not wash her hands, she could not brush her teeth, any of those like basic hygiene necessities.
Well, so you guys have all been in just a few days through quite a lot. What's next?
Personally, I can tell you that from the organizers that we've been working with, I heard it really well on Saturday, our first protest. This elder said that, back in the 60s, it became a movement, and it's not like we can't just, do one big weekend and then that's it. Like, most of us are going to continue this, if not every single day, every other day. We will continue these protests until there's change made. We plan on making this a full movement because everybody that is in this movement is as committed as everybody else. And it just feels like, especially after people here and, people that had it a lot worse in other big cities, everybody's just kind of feeling this, there needs to be real reform in our criminal justice system, especially when it comes to, implicit racial bias, killing unarmed Black men and women, and all the things that come with the problems that we have in the criminal justice system. So, I can speak for the organizers that I work with. and saying that this is something we're not going to just do this weekend. It's going to be, I mean, you can see we've already been doing, it's Wednesday and we just had another really big protest, and it's just going to continue. You know, we don't really plan on stopping until we have a couple things done by the city and apologies made, people like police officers being held accountable for the things that they've done.
I think there's also a split or a portion of the Charleston community that's upset with the property damage from and I think the fight continues each and every day that we march. I can tell you for a fact, when we were out there, even when we were running with our signs, the community was honking their horns. They were coming out of their houses, people of color, white people, and saying, yes, keep going, be careful. So the community part, like the community is there, even if they are, you know, not able to be with us on the front lines. That feeling is there. The people against it are more just the wealthier people who just don't want to address it, and apparently are government officials who want to erase that memory that that happened at all on their watch, because it feels like one big, you did it, no you did it, no you did it. I still have no idea whether it was the sheriff, the National Guard, the mayor, or the police chief who ordered the police to act like that, and people want to know.
Thank you so much, and thank you all. I don't want to go too far over. We've already gone a little bit, but that's fine. I mean, this is a great conversation, and I think it's important that everyone knows your story and knows what happened, since clearly the media wasn't there to film it. Like Tola said, we're going to be posting all the videos and pictures that we received from different protesters that were present in Marion Square this past Sunday in the afternoon before curfew. Again, some of them are very graphic. It's terrifying. I posted a video earlier this week after I represented people in bond court, and it was terrifying. So just be warned about that. You know, and DT and M and everyone, you guys are, you know, the foot soldiers here for change, and we appreciate that at SC4CJR. We hope that you guys join us in our fight for criminal justice reform. We've got many creative ideas and creative solutions to a lot of these problems, and we're hoping to continue the fight and to help you all however we can. And we hope that you help us in pursuing our reform that we are definitely moving towards and have been and continue to do so. I know I want to chime into Emily Walter here with ACLU, who's the Community Outreach Coordinator. Emily, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for being a part of our community here and helping to coordinate this and other events. Can you tell us what ACLU is doing in response to this? What kind of events do you guys have planned?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you for hosting this, Allie. And thank you to everyone who shared their stories today. I learned a lot, and I think that what I experienced on Sunday was very similar to what y'all went through. So solidarity there. But yeah, so I think in the near future, we're having a Know Your Rights training tomorrow evening with SC4CJR and some organizers who are working on the ground to kind of go through what our rights are as protesters, whether we're organizing a protest or attending one. I think that, I mean, that can only go so far, and that everyone's civil rights were violated this weekend and continue to be violated at these protests, but at least we can kind of know what the laws are in South Carolina around that. And then Allie, I think that you're also going to talk about, you know, what happens when you are arrested. From what I've seen in, you know, Charleston and heard in Columbia, the conditions are terrible, but I think at least demystifying that process can hopefully kind of lift up what we can do around that. And we'll just kind of talk a little bit more about what our hopeful goals are in South Carolina in terms of police divestment and be able to reinvest in our communities and change that narrative. So.
And Emily, when is that event and how can people access that?
Yeah, good point. It's tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. And there's a Facebook event for it. If you just type in KYR police brutality, it should come up. And people can register at the Eventbrite link that is linked in the event. And I'll post it in the comment section as well.
And I'd also like to mention again to our viewers that SC4CJR is coordinating pro bono lawyers to represent people that are arrested during these protests at bond court, and reach out to us. We have lawyers that can help if you have any questions, if you need anything. We're also in the process of organizing legal observers to attend these protests to help with everything and to observe that. And we're going to continue to fight with you all and for you all. And thank you so much. Frank, I want to give you a moment to make any additional comments, what your goals are, what your next steps are, and anything else you want to add.
Sure, thanks. I think in terms of goals, I think one is just a main narrative goal. It's like to reinforce that things are the things that are happening are not because the system is flawed. These are the predictable outcomes. This is how this system is designed to function. Law enforcement from its origins in the United States has been a tool to protect the oppressor over the oppressed. If you look at the origins in Charleston, it was about coming out of the slave patrols and ensuring that enslaved Black people can't organize. Then it went to enforcing convict leasing. Then it went to enforcing Jim Crow. Then it went to enforcing the war on drugs. So that is the history of law enforcement. And so when folks are talking about reforming the system, it's really recognizing that this is not a broken system. This is just how it's designed to function. I think is important to remember. And I think another important fact is that the sheriffs are all elected officials. Chiefs are all appointed by elected municipal leaders. Your vote has a huge impact, particularly at the local level. And so we have a primary coming up. We'll have the general, obviously, in the fall. But voting is extremely powerful tool, and voting has consequences. So I think not forgetting that in the context of criminal justice reform is an important thing. And then beyond that, Emily's really leading our work in the local, in Charleston area around the divestment campaign. We're really excited to be able to support the community in ways that they need support. And we're here just as an ally in this movement and look forward to really digging in and making change happen here.
And I just want to latch on to what Frank said about allies. In closing, I want to thank all of you who aren't people of color who are participating, active, as we know that it is much more important that you are vocal allies rather than just staying silent or even just, the general mutterings of how this is unacceptable. I think it's long overdue that the country, for most of us anywhere, coming together and understanding this is a large issue, and that you guys in particular are incredibly beneficial in aiding this movement, because it can't be done if only people of color, Black or brown, are making this an argument. Obviously, we know that. That's why we're still here today. So I want to urge anybody who's watching, to like our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, but also be active, regardless of your color, your race, your ethnicity, to be active and to push for this, because this is a noble movement. And it's not just about race, it's about humanity. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. We'll see you again, and we hope to see you tomorrow at 6 on Facebook Live. You can check out our page for that, or ACLU. Thank you, Frank. Thank you to all your protesters. Emily, Tola, thank you all so much. Have a wonderful night. Be safe, please, and let us know if you have any questions. Take care, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.